everybody. Thanks for joining us for Beyond the Stage. My name is Ruth Eggerman. I am the Director of Marketing here at Livermore Valley Arts, and I'm with our Chief Executive Officer, Chris Carter. Say hi, Chris.
Hey Ruth, how you doing?
I am good. I'm good. It is officially summer and
Yes.
officially hot here in Livermore.
Yep.
Yeah, welcome to the heat. I think we're supposed to have a heat wave this weekend.
I
What
was in Lake Tahoe last weekend and it snowed on us.
I,
So it was not hot there at all. It was
that's
freezing.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And that was unusual for like people who actually live there as well.
Yeah, it
Like,
doesn't usually snow in June. That was a freak storm.
yeah, that's strange. So, you know what I miss about the summers is summer rains. Did you get summer rain
In
in
Texas,
Texas? Yeah.
yeah, we get thunderstorms and things like
Yeah.
that. And I remember rain when I was growing up in the South, it was always warm.
Yeah.
And it was almost like going outside. Like it didn't bother you. It felt good almost. And
I
then
know.
here when it rains, it's always cold.
I know. I think that's what I really miss is like a summer rain that you could like when we were kids, we would just play in the rain,
Yeah,
just be in it. It wasn't
yeah,
like a thing to not be in it here, because it rains in the winter months and not so much in the summer. In fact, I maybe once the whole time I've lived here have I seen any sort of summer rain.
yeah,
Um, it's just interesting. 'Cause I really miss thunder and lightning and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But whatever. This is where I live now. I am not living with humidity, which makes me happy.
yeah.
So, uh, I do have. Are you doing any traveling this summer?
Not really. Just going up to Lake Tahoe a few times.
Nice.
My kids, the twins are turning 21 uh,
Oh
in a
no.
week. Yeah, so a week from or like 8 days. So we're gonna go up there with them and have some
Nice.
friends and celebrate their 21st birthday.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll appreciate that. I am actually headed up to. I'm going to take a road trip with my kids
Oh yeah.
up to Oregon, up to the Oregon coast. We have some friends who live up there. In fact, we actually talk about them on our podcast, which was
The
kind of
ones that have
strange.
the shop.
Yeah, yeah, they have a house on the coast, and
Hmm.
so we are gonna go take the road trip, take our time driving up there, and enjoy the beautiful Oregon coast a little bit, and then head back, I suppose. And it should be fun. Be a good time.
That's
It's been a long time since we've been on a road trip together. I think the last time we went, we headed to Colorado,
hmm
and that was right before my youngest senior year of high school. So that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
great.
that's a great drive. You'll
Yeah.
have a good time. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It'll be
Well,
fun.
I remember when my dad turned 70, 12 years ago, for his birthday, I took him on a road trip and we went up to Oregon to Bandon Dunes, which is a golf kind of mecca. And it's on the coast and there's no town really. It's like
It's just a golf course.
it's five golf courses and like a resort and it feels like you're in Scotland or something because all the courses are right on the ocean.
Great. Oh, that
It
sounds like fun.
it was such a cool trip. I got to do it something like that again with
Yeah.
him before long. But I
Worth
remember
it.
that road trip was awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I'm kind of rooting for like just you know, we're all my kids are adults now and living their own lives, doing their own things, and none of it's really driven by me at
Yeah,
all. So it should be a good time to like just sort of hang out together and listen to goofy stuff on the radio or whatever it is we're doing. I
yeah.
don't have I have an old enough car that I have a CD player and a tape deck, and that's it. It doesn't and have any way to hook up to my
Hmm.
phone, but I'm sure my kids will figure that out. And they will put an end to that, or they will bring their
Yeah.
own music, which will be
I
kind of
remember when they came out with the CD Discmans and you had a tape deck in your car, they had a thing that was like a tape with a cable connected to it that would hook up to your CD player.
right.
And so you would bring your Discman and put it on the console and then put the tape in and you could listen to CDs. But then every time you hit a bump, like the CD would skip.
Right,
Um,
right.
I still might have my
Yeah,
tape thing. I've
yeah.
kept all my tapes. Um,
Did you really?
oh yeah, I have. They're all right in front of me here.
Wow. Yeah, because I have
I've
it,
got like 150 tapes right in front of me.
because I actually have a tape deck in my car. When I go to like a thrift store, I go and try to find the music and see if there's any tapes that I'm interested in. I saw a show, was it last week already? Only last week. I saw a show last week and it was on the 80s. It was an
Hmm
80s sort of tribute show, and I bought myself one of their cassette tapes because I was like, "Oh, I have someplace to play this."
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I keep a
Otherwise, I wouldn't.
Walkman in my desk just so I can listen to the tapes if I want
Oh,
to.
do you really?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy. That's crazy. I never actually had a Walkman, I don't think.
I
I
don't
don't
think
think,
my kids would know what to do with these things,
yeah. You
or
better
how they
show
work.
them. You better show them if you want your legacy to
But
to live
We've lived through,
on.
because when I was young, we had records.
Right.
And I remember playing records when I was a kid and buying records. And then when I was a teenager, it was all tapes.
Yeah.
And then when I was in college, it was all CDs. And so I have records, I have tapes, and I have CDs. I've
Yeah.
got, everything.
And you've kept them all?
Yeah, I've kept it all. So I have
Yeah.
a huge CD collection, huge tape collection, and a big record collection.
I may have to
And
come
my kids
over
don't
and
have any
check
of
out some
that.
of your CDs and see if I can take some with me
Yeah,
on my road
yeah.
trip.
Let me know. I got a bunch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just that we're gonna probably head out just after the barbecue. So
Okay, you can you can steal some. That's fine.
yeah, I'll bring them back.
Yeah.
Well, today we got the great opportunity to talk with Ashlen Hilliard. She is the person who's going to lead us on some education, I guess is the way I would say it, educational stuff with regards to the psychology of cults. It's here Sunday, November 23rd. And this was a really fascinating conversation we had. And I think we just really scratched the surface.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and I think we were trying to be respectful too because it is really sensationalized a lot, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so and she's that's the work that she does is she's an interventionist with families and people that deal with that actually in this
yeah.
have to go through these kind of things. And so it is a serious topic. Um, but she did say the show does have moments of
Humor.
humor, right?
Yeah,
It's not, it's not all uh, intent. It's as intense as you might think it would be.
yeah,
But she's a really fascinating person herself
yeah,
and very thoughtful. I love it when you ask someone a question and they go, "That's a good question," and she did that a lot. So I felt like we asked good questions.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It was really an interesting conversation we had, and lots of information in there. If you, and she was really kind of also speaking to people who might be dealing with this in their own lives
yeah.
right now. And so if that feels like you, I'd highly recommend you listen to this, check her out, and obviously come check out the show. There's never too much preparation for something like this or understanding.
hmm
It can also affect every single one of us at any given moment,
Yep.
where all of a sudden we find ourselves in this place. So stay tuned. She'll be here with Psychology of Cults at the Bankhead on Sunday, November 23rd at 3 p.m. You can get your tickets at livermorearts.org or calling the box office at 925-373-6800. Please enjoy the interview, everybody.
Very cool.
We're super happy to have you here on Beyond the Stage. This show in particular of our 25-26 season has brought up some really interesting conversations already. People are
Ooh,
into it. They want to know more about it. They want
that's
to,
amazing.
and it's all sort of tapping into what's out in the zeitgeist right now with regards to
Yes.
what people are watching and listening to.
Yeah.
So,
That is so cool to hear. That is
yeah,
so cool to hear. That's awesome. Well, yay. And it'll be November, right? End of November?
November 23rd.
That's right.
yeah,
Very
right.
cool.
Is that right before Thanksgiving?
I think it's
Yes.
right before. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's so cool to hear. It's brought up some cool conversations.
Oh,
That makes
yeah.
me happy to know.
Great.
People see it,
Well,
they're like, what is this show about?
I had questions too when I was uh, introduced to the topic for the show, and I was asking the agency, well, can you tell me more about it? And
Mm-hmm.
um, they didn't quite have enough. If this was a pretty long
A
time
while
back,
ago.
and so we were
Yeah.
still a little bit early in the stage, but I still felt like it was intriguing enough. Just the title, I think would bring people out and kind of make people think.
Yep.
We have you been to Livermore before, Ashland,
I
or the
haven't.
Bay?
No.
Have you been to the Bay Area?
I've been only really to Los Angeles area. I
Okay.
haven't been to San Francisco. I haven't like spent much time in like the Bay Area. And I certainly
Oh,
don't think I've ever been to Livermore. And I'm in Portland, Oregon.
you are.
So I'm not far, but it's like COVID happened and we all kind of like hunkered down and sometimes I travel a lot for work. And so like I don't travel much for fun, but I'm ready to get to that stage in my life, you know?
Well, San
You and me
Francisco is a lot
both.
of fun. It's the
I
Portland of
I was
California.
about to say, I'm sure I would love it. I love it here. I'm sure I would love the Portland of California. Yeah.
Is Well, let me ask, is Portland kind of, there's that show Portlandia.
Hmm.
Is that like accurate or is it
Unfortunately, incredibly accurate.
incredible?
Did I?
Unfortunately, it's beyond accurate. It's well, I'd say for, you probably have people who've lived here for like 30 years who are like, "Oh, that show's not completely accurate." Or, there's probably some people out there who criticize it. But when I moved here, right before the start of the pandemic, it was like, oh my God, they nailed it.
They nailed it.
Well, fun fact, a friend of mine, I have two very dear friends, well, they're married to each
Mm.
other in Portland, and they own a store, two stores, two locations in Portland that were used for the filming during
Oh,
Portlandia. So uh, they had a lot
what's
of fun with it. So two different times I think it was used for the filming of
was it the
different
Women
episodes.
and Women First, library that I know they filmed out of.
No, I don't
I'm
think
so curious. What's
so.
the name of their stores?
Paxson Gate.
I love Paxton Gate. I wanted to be a paleontologist as a kid.
Oh my
And
Oh,
so
God.
I go into Paxton Gate and I'm just looking at all their amazing like fossils. I bought my friend a megalodon tooth from
Yeah.
Paxton Gate for her birthday one year. I love Paxton Gate. It's one of those stores that I always take people who visit Portland.
huh.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that. I will tell.
Yeah.
Yes, please
Maybe we
pass it
could,
Yeah.
along.
yeah,
Yeah,
new
Maybe we could get
sponsor,
them to sponsor this episode.
Paxton
Wink, wink.
Gate.
that would be rad. That would be beyond rad. Cool fossils, cool taxidermy, cool
Yeah.
preservation stuff. Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we really appreciate you spending some time with us for this
sure.
podcast, Ashlyn. What we like to do is get to know the artists and the people coming to our theater a little bit better, and it helps us to promote the show and get the word out. We've had a lot of great. It's interesting. Most of the people we interview are musicians.
Hmm.
Um, and we haven't interviewed many speakers. We've done a few actors, but I'm really excited to learn more about your background. I actually have a master's degree in psychology myself,
Oh, great.
and I ended
Yes.
up in the
Yeah.
arts for some reason. But Uh, I think the first thing we want to know is just a little bit more about your own background and how you came into, or maybe we should say a few things first. So, you have an organization that's called People Leave Cults. Is that
Mhm.
correct? It's provides services for people who are uh, experiencing are part of these groups or experiences where this is coercion going on and it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard of many organizations like that. Are you the only one that's doing this?
No, certainly not. But so I've worked in cult recovery now, I guess like as a field, like working with survivors of cultic groups and relationships going on 7 years. Next year will be my 8th year.
Hmm.
And I've worked for different nonprofits, both at like regional levels or local levels and also international levels. Um, and so there are people who also work in the field who run different nonprofits who help cult survivors. I started People Leave Cults, which is like my sort of independent consulting LLC about 3 years ago now. So after working for all these different nonprofits, I largely started People Leave Cults because there's not a lot of people who work with the families who are concerned about a loved one's group involvement. So there are some nonprofits that, help survivors. And when we talk about cults, I want to like first preface by saying that label can encapsulate so many survivors of harm.
Yeah.
It can encapsulate people who've been in trafficking relationships. It can contain people who've been in cult like family systems, like really abusive one on one relationships. It can also include people who've been in more sort of like niche religious based cults, ones that maybe we see
Hmm.
typically more on documentaries and things like that. Business groups, I mean, you name it. And so the sort of cultic phenomena is really just another like label, another like view towards helping survivors. Um, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of trafficking organizations, domestic violence support, but there's not government funding that exists, to my knowledge, for people who've left cults.
Yeah.
And so, and I think a lot of that just has to do with maybe the government getting afraid about the whole religious freedom components that sometimes groups will lean on
Hmm.
to justify harming people, right? And so, the work that I do is I offer low cost initial points of contact for survivors who are like, hey, I've left a group. What the heck's available in terms of services?
Yeah.
What exists? And because I've worked in the field for many years now, I have a good idea of like how to kind of triage them. Here's how you find a therapist who specializes in this stuff. Here are some organizations with more funding. And I offer support groups as well for
Hmm.
survivors. Aside from my work with survivors, I particularly work with families who have loved ones impacted by cults who are like, my son, my daughter, my child is involved in a group. I'm really concerned. I don't know how to move forward.
Yeah.
And that's the work that only a handful of us do in the US. Very, very small amount of people could say that they're like a cult intervention specialist. That's how I guess my working title is.
Hmm.
And I largely started doing that work once I got connected to my mentors, Patrick Ryan and Joseph Kelly. They have been helping families for over 35 years all over the world impacted by cults. And you name a group, they've probably dealt with it, or have had some touch point with it. So after I met them, that's really what launched me into I absolutely want to find a way to preserve their work, to do this work, to carry on this work. And so I started People Leave Cults to do consulting alongside of them.
Well, it's interesting. I'm kind of surprised that there's not more support out there for family members or friends that are, trying to deal with a loved one that's going through some of
Yeah.
this. And you kind of touched on this a little while ago. It seems like because of media and TV shows and things like that, the word cult, we kind of associate it with, some sort of it's very sensationalized, right? And there's these groups that everybody has,
Extremely.
yeah,
Yeah.
knows about. But I feel like when I looked at your site and the way you talked about it, there's kind of a broader definition of it
Hmm.
than what we are assuming cults are. So can you talk a little bit more about like how do you define an organization that is like a cult or has this coercive control over people?
Hmm. Great question. I'll first start off by saying, even amongst professionals in the field, academics, researchers, there isn't one agreed upon definition as to what a cult actually is. Not many people know that. And I think it's because cultic groups can look like so many different things
Hmm.
that it's hard to give a definition because it's not like a one size fits all, right? A lot
Yeah.
of this stuff is very nuanced. And there are people who look at the term, I mean, the Latin root of the term culture is cult.
Hmm.
Um, it, is like referring to a subset from a sociological perspective, a subset, a grouping of people who maybe share ideas, affiliations, community. But from a psychological perspective, we look more at issues of harm, right? Like what harm is potentially being done.
Hmm.
And the way I talk to people about cults is I think cults can very easily be used as a pejorative or a sort of label to be really judgmental, maybe about a group. It's easy for anyone to say that group's a cult, right? But there was a psychiatrist, Robert J. Lifton, who was really profound in the field. He was like, that can be used as a thought terminating cliche. It's like throwing a label on, even in our political two-party system, it's
Yeah.
saying, well, he's a Democrat or he's Republican, and it can shut down higher levels of thinking and cause defensiveness. And the term cult can be used in the same way.
Yeah.
And certainly it's the one thing we tell families not to do when they're concerned. Do not tell your loved one you're in a
That they're at
cult
a oh, okay.
because it's not going to get you anywhere. And in fact, they may try to prove you wrong by digging their heels into the group more.
Wow.
And so, I'm less concerned from my perspective about whether we label a group as cult or not cult. I'm more concerned about if someone has a cultic relationship with the
Hmm.
group in question. So, in other words, The Vow, for example, was a really popular documentary on Nixium and all the different workshops that people attended with Nixium. There was maybe hundreds, if not thousands, of people who attended a workshop, but they weren't harmed in the same ways that people higher up who were closer to Keith Raniere were.
Hmm.
Um, so it kind of goes to show there's different levels of like psychological and physical harm in these groups. Someone may have a pretty benign experience and say, well, this just isn't for me, and
Hmm.
like leave and just kind of move on. And then another person may be extremely harmed by harm done in the group. So, one person may have more of a cultic relationship to something than another.
As you have worked with people that have gone through this, are there certain, I don't know, personality traits or certain things that, might make one more susceptible to this kind of coercion or do you see like trends among the people who are uh, going through this?
Certainly. I think, in short answer, we are all susceptible. Not many people realize how close we are to cult involvement at any time. It's like sometimes 1 or 2 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
We may know a loved one who's involved in something that we're concerned about. Um, and I think, when it comes to why people join groups or how they're recruited more likely into groups is sometimes they're at really vulnerable places in their lives. Maybe they've just moved, maybe they're in their early 20s and they're like figuring out who they are and they want to try new things. Sometimes joining a cult can actually be life-saving initially. There were groups like Synanon, for example, back in the day that helped people who were addicts on the streets because there wasn't any social services for
Hmm.
them. And it wasn't until later that Synanon became a much more abusive cult-like organization. And so, joining groups, no one willingly joins a destructive group. And people oftentimes, of course, offer a very positive experience on the outset. And it's not until later that that can get twisted on its head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's like I think everybody wants to belong, right? You,
of
you need you
course.
want to have a
Yeah,
sense of belonging to something. And so I could see how that would be attractive.
yeah, of
Um,
course. And I wanted to circle back to your sort of question about definition.
mhm,
People assume that you have to be a religious group or have a charismatic cult leader in order to be considered a cult-like group or relationship, and that's simply not the case.
mhm,
Most cultic groups do have a charismatic leader, but it's not uncommon that control can be exerted through maybe the ideology, the ideas, or maybe the people in the group or community itself can be sort of checking in on each other. Um, and so the way I sort of look at cultic groups in relationship is, it's a system of more than one.
mhm.
Um, in other words, you can have two people where a relationship is cult-like with one another, like an abusive domestic violence relationship, for example, can be very cult-like. Um, More than one, it is a large amount of devotion to some person, some idea, something, whether that thing is religious or non-religious. And it must contain aspects of coercive control where they value more your dedication to the cause, even if it puts your own personal health, safety,
Mhm.
relationships at stake. Even if it's of your own self detriment, they prioritize the group or the idea or the person above individual health, freedom, safety, things like that.
Just a few minutes ago, you mentioned, if you are worried somebody's in a cult, you say, don't say a cult. Don't say
Yeah.
you're in a cult, right?
Yes.
What would you recommend? How would you recommend families, friends approach somebody then who is showing signs of, being in a coercive relationship of that sort?
That was one
Well,
of
like,
our social media questions, by the way. So
yeah,
That's
we did post
awesome.
some questions and somebody did ask that.
That's great.
Hmm.
That's the work that I do is I work with families and come up with strategies. In terms of like general advice, certainly my mentor Pat Ryan always says, if you're going to interfere with somebody's life, you better have a damn good reason. And sometimes families see someone in a group that maybe they're suspicious of, or maybe they don't have a lot of knowledge of. They just think maybe they do weird beliefs or practices, or it just seems off. That's not enough information necessarily to accuse someone of being involved in a thing. And so I think it's really important for families, and a lot of the work that I do is we have to find ways to bring down our own anxieties and focus on what we know and what we don't know. Where is our brain trying to fill in the gaps with this stuff?
Hmm.
Because it may truly be a situation that calls for greater concern or action but it also may be a situation where someone may be getting a lot out of it, but we don't have a lot of evidence that it's harmful. You know, we all have different beliefs in things that can be considered very strange, I'm sure. Some people have like their one conspiracy theory, for example, that they're like, I believe in this, right? We all have weird ideas about the way the world works. Where that can become harmful is when it goes up against how mental health is defined and positive and healthy views of mental health. So in other words, when that idea becomes so consuming that it takes over your ability to function healthily in society,
Hmm.
where maybe you are at risk for self-harm with yourself, or how relationships, how you see yourself with your own community or family. So those are things to look out for. Those are the changes. In terms of advice, Ruth, it's a really good question. We don't know what we don't know when it comes to someone's involvement. And so what I encourage families is to be curious. We want to be curious about what someone's up to. What is
Yeah.
this thing? What is your experience? We don't want to be probative, we don't want to like put them on trial, but before we criticize what's going on, we need to know as much information as possible about your loved one's experience. What are they getting out of it? What is this group about? Are we noticing any changes that we need to be concerned of? Um, Curiosity oftentimes goes a long way. Judgment shuts down conversation
Hmm.
and certainly can drive someone into the arms of a cult even further, if that's what's going on.
Is there, I know that there's like any of us could somehow find ourselves in that kind of situation, given all of, if the stars are aligned, the stars are aligned,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, um, it, and I'm just thinking about that and thinking about, is there any particular segment that's more prone to be drawn in? Like even if it's women, even if it's sort of general, you're going to find
Mm-hmm.
this more with women or men or people who are, economically challenged or what
Mm-hmm.
have you, anything like that.
I think it's a great question. Certainly, some trends I see are folks who are neurodivergent.
Mm.
I'm neurodivergent.
Hmm.
People with ADHD or autism, or folks who are highly creative, maybe have like a really creative mind. Really intelligent people oftentimes end up in groups.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
if you think about it, it makes sense. Groups provide structure.
Right.
They let you know exactly what they want from you, like what they expect. And for people who crave structure, who are neurodivergent, it's good to know that stuff. Like it's actually comforting to know exactly what's expected of you in a routine, things like that. And when it comes to folks who are highly intelligent, cults actively recruit the best and the brightest among us because they can't, I mean, not just anyone can hang with the demands that high control groups place upon people.
Hmm.
The schedule, the routine, the exhaustion, um, and people who are intelligent can also play with ideas. So we all, for example, have um, our own fundamental assumptions about the way the world works. And what cults offer is a different set of fundamental assumptions for how to view the world or reality. And so really intelligent people can like transcend their own fundamental assumptions and really play with ideas.
Yeah.
And I think certainly cults take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes being in a cult is very expensive. Um, and so not everyone can afford to keep being in them because of the classes, the workshops, the costs
Yeah.
financially of giving.
Okay. So, well, it's kind of interesting to me. Like, I think like I was just talking to my son about this. Like, there's this, you see, there's a lot of people are kind of trying to figure out who they are, right? Like, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to define themselves. And I think um, maybe that helps you. It's this, like you just said, it's the structure, but it's also kind of helping you figure out who you are and what path you
Mm-hmm.
should be taking. And is oftentimes, there's so many options we have in the world. That's the paralysis by analysis, right? And so when you find something that just um, makes a lot of sense, it just seems easier to fall into that, I think, because
Yeah.
we're a little bit overwhelmed by all the paths that we could take in the world sometimes.
Yeah. It can be comforting to one's anxiety when someone offers a solution or path.
Yeah.
Um, and some groups, sell enlightenment. And that that can also be comforting to some folks.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Is there anything that in the recruitment side of it
mhm,
that you should be aware of? Like, for example, if you're on a dating app, right?
mm,
I would imagine dating apps are a great source, and through my own experience, a great source for trying to recruit people for a cult or cult-like
mhm.
organization, or scam them for money or what have you.
Sure.
Are you
Well,
seeing it?
it's
Are you seeing
kind
any
of
trends like that within?
it's interesting what you just brought up, Ruth, because I don't know, Ashland, but it seems maybe it's more prolific now than it used to be because of social media. People are
Yeah.
finding each other, finding
Oh,
people
for
who are
sure.
have similar interests a little bit easier. Do you think it's more prolific now than maybe it was in the past?
Great question. And I love that you brought up dating apps because joining a cult is sometimes like falling in love. It's not always rational how people end up in these groups. Sometimes it's just a feeling that they need to be a part of that community or that belief is really attractive. Um, I think in terms of recruitment methods, it is so what technology has done is made this stuff so accessible.
Mhm.
And that's why I mentioned it's like we're 1 or 2 degrees from cultic involvement at any time. It's like all of us have been scammed at some point. All of us have been deceived or have been influenced by something maybe online or a person or a news source or an ad. You know, being deceived is certainly in a one-off context very different than being involved in a cultic group, but
Hmm.
we've all had that happen. That's a shared experience of what it means to be human. And something that the internet makes more challenging are these isolated spaces that algorithms can throw you into. And certainly, what makes it different is the accessibility. You don't have to leave your house anymore to go meet with a group of people. You can just open your phone at 2 in the morning, and that connection and those ideas and whatever it might be, it's instant. It's like instant gratification. There's not as much
Hmm.
separation as there used to be. It's not just like going to a group meeting once a week anymore and then coming back to your home and having some separation and space to think. It's constant.
Mhm.
Right. And you had said something earlier about we all have our own, everyone has at least one conspiracy theory or something
Oh, sure. We all have like
strange.
weird
Yeah,
beliefs.
whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
But it, in the old days, it would have been like, well, you were the only one in town that thought this one thing. But now
Yeah.
your reach is far beyond your neighborhood. And so it just seems like you can find each other a lot easier,
Yeah.
for better or worse. Um, Go ahead, Ruth.
No, I was, you know, just want to make sure that we don't give away the whole show.
Yeah,
What?
I was going to ask you, well,
Don't worry, I'm keeping some things.
we did want to know, I
Okay,
know we're
good.
going deep into this. This is fascinating.
Yeah,
But could you
really.
talk a little bit about the show and what it's like and what people would
Sure.
expect?
Sure. So I don't go on tour until early October, so it's still sort of under development. But I'm really excited to really make this information more approachable for folks, hopefully more understandable, more relatable. You know, we have so many documentaries that have been done on cults. Some have been done really well, by the
Hmm.
way, and have been really accurate, sensitive portrayals of the harm. Some of those documentaries have been done not so well, where it's much more exploitative of like the abuse that happened. And sometimes what people get when it comes to cults in the media is they're seeing the more extreme 10%, if that, portrayal of groups that exist. Um, but what people need to know is like there's so many nuanced variations of how cults can look. And I think like we need more stories. We need to understand more of the nuances of how these groups can look so that people can protect themselves.
Hmm.
If we assume that a cult only looks like Jonestown or Waco or these really intense versions of cultic groups, then that doesn't give us enough information to make it relatable
Yeah.
to our own stories sometimes. And so I hope to bring about sort of a educational intervention, I guess you could say, to this show. Here's how many versions, variations of like control and influence, how these things can work. And I hope to demystify the experience of why people join cults, why they stay in cults, and what drives them to leave cults. Because I think even after all the documentaries we have, there's still such a question of what is a cult actually? And oh, that will never happen to me. And it really can happen to anybody.
Mhm.
And so I'm really excited to show some really interesting clips,
Hmm.
share some interesting stories that I've done while my work with families, for example, and just sort of illustrate how I guess nuanced and just all the different things and ways that cults can look. I want to demystify it, in other
Yeah.
words, for people.
Excellent. You mentioned a number of documentaries that you felt like were really good ones.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you want to share any of those or a couple of those with our listeners, as so many of us,
Yeah.
me included, are fascinated by these types of documentaries, and one, we want to watch and spend our time with something that is accurate for
Hmm.
sure and not just exploitive.
Yeah. I think some of the best documentaries that have been done have not only been from the survivors' lenses, like their experience in it, but also have included aspects of education along the way. You
Hmm.
know, this is what I learned. Here's things to watch out for. This was my experience. It's like, it's not just highlighting the horrific abuse that happened, like sometimes true crime can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
right.
it's, we need more education alongside survivor stories so that people can apply this to their own lives. I think some of my favorite ones has been The Vow. The Vow is great on HBO Max. Breath of Fire is one that I saw a couple months ago on HBO. Breath of Fire was about the rise and fall of Guru Jagat and Kundalini Yoga and
Hmm.
3HO. Highly recommend. What I loved about that documentary is they had um, a lot of sort of generational spans of different, you had the family members, the parents who talked about the group and raising their kids in these groups. There were kids that were raised in these groups and what that
Hmm.
experience was like from a multi-generational lens. Um, and how these different sort of gurus came from the East to the West and its influences upon yoga and meditation and all these different, cults and sects that have happened across the US. So um, those have been some of my favorites. Yeah.
Great. Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing.
You're you're involved in the production of a film right now. Is that correct? Called Beyond the Fences
Yes, Beyond the Fence.
or Beyond the Fence.
I am an executive producer. It's an indie film.
Hmm.
And I was approached by the writer, director, Lindsay Paulette. She wrote this amazing script about the experiences of a group of sisters who were raised in a high control group in a rural place. And she really wanted someone who had worked with survivors to look at the scripts, offer suggestions. They wanted it to be as accurate and sensitive of a portrayal as possible for the community in which they're representing, right, through this story. And so I've been able to consult with them, offer feedback, and we're currently seeking funders. We've been actively
Okay.
pitching it to people in Hollywood
Hmm.
um, and beyond. And yeah, so I'm really excited about that project. I'm excited. I was just on a Hulu series called How I Escaped My Cult. I was on 3 episodes of that series, and there is an HBO Max documentary coming out soon that I am on and I'm really excited about. I don't have an official name for it yet, but they
Okay.
said that it's in queue and it's going to launch soon. So,
All right. Well, we'll look
um,
forward to hearing about that.
yeah.
Super
Yeah.
cool.
So
One
when
of
I go on
our,
the, oh, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, one of our listeners, so we do put out, ask if anybody has questions, and one of the questions was about the Hulu show and what that was like for you to share your own experience with the world.
Very cool. I love the opportunity. I've had different documentaries, who are seeking an expert come to me and say, hey, we're looking to cover this group. We have this survivor's story. And it's really cool to be presented with survivor accounts
Hmm.
about what they experienced. And my job is to provide an educational advocacy lens. In other words, I want the information that I talk about the psychology of this stuff, to really humanize the survivor's experience. Um, I really try to help people understand that, no one is stupid for getting involved in these groups. Anyone can fall into these things. And I really try to break down how they were harmed in their experiences in a way that people can understand, even if they've never been involved in something like that. And so I try to add some educational context to the survivor's narrative so
Hmm.
that people can understand. And I flew out to Denver to film the Hulu show. And I was there. I had Ray Dotch asking me questions. Rapid fire questions for a couple hours in a cool Airbnb in Denver. And he helped with the show Scientology in the Aftermath series with
Hmm.
Leah Remini. And yeah, just had a really wonderful time. Really wonderful
Wow.
time.
I was going to say, it's interesting. You're talking a lot about survivors. We haven't really talked much about the perpetrators.
Hmm.
And, if somebody is that leader or part of that group that's doing the coercive um, piece of it, and how do you ever work with people like that are trying to come out of a cult or a group, or um, what is there anything we have know about people that do this and do this kind of stuff to others?
Mm. Oftentimes, people who are in leadership, whether they're like sort of the cult leader persona or personality, um, or maybe they're just like higher up and
Hmm.
they're enforcing this stuff. Oftentimes, the cult leader is a narcissistic individual, and it's interesting. Like every group is different. Just like every leader is different, and their motivations for why they want to take advantage of people can be different. For some, it's for money. For others, it's for sex or for drugs. It just depends. Certainly, there have been people who have been higher up within organizations, or maybe who were training people in organizations who have left.
Hmm.
And it's a difficult road for them because both can be true. They were influenced into this thing, they were recruited themselves, and that is really awful. And also, they still hold themselves and need to hold themselves accountable for the harm that they inflicted while in that role. It's like both can be true. They were
Hmm.
they were victimized by this thing themselves, but it doesn't take away from the need to take responsibility for the harm that was done. And it's a hard road when you know that you've harmed people, or maybe you trained people, recruited people yourself into these systems. Um, yeah,
Sorry, I was just thinking about it as you were talking, and it's hard not to just get angry,
I
when you
know,
hear these stories about what people have done.
I know. And sometimes their experience, if they're in leadership or if they're the people recruiting for the cult, there can be a lot of benefits to that. Sometimes they're paid to do that, or they're treated better, their family's given more amenities, and so that can even be a driver. Their experience in the group may be improved if they go out and recruit people themselves. And so yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Is there something you'd like to say to our listeners in the event that they suspect a family or a friend or a family member is maybe falling prey
Yeah,
to one of these groups?
great question. Certainly, what I recommend anyone do is start a timeline for yourself, a written timeline of sort of high points, um, so that if their involvement escalates or if there are more concerning behaviors that come up, you have the documentation process already started. For example, my team and I, we always have people complete an intake form, and we always ask for a timeline. There are some documentation things that you can do to prepare along the way so that when something happens or if something were to happen that, puts your family in crisis mode, you already have a lot of this documentation ready to go. There's nothing worse than, your loved one's involvement escalating and they're maybe self-harming or there's some concern there. And then you have to like gather text messages that concerned you, emails, think about a timeline. That can be really hard to do when crisis hits. So
Hmm.
just sort of documenting along the way for yourself what's going on, the date they started getting involved, when their behavior changed, what that looked like, I think is really helpful to do early on. And like I said, we don't know what we don't know. And so one of the best things you can do is not let yourself go to worst case scenario. Continue to gather information, whether that's observing what books they're reading, what books they have on the bookshelf, or just finding time to connect with them in ways you would normally, and get as much insight as you can into their experience from a non-judgmental lens.
Hmm.
Is so, so important. So, so important. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Good
Thank
advice.
you.
Much appreciated. Should we lighten the
Mhm.
mood a little bit?
Yeah, this has been a pretty serious conversation.
It's it's absolutely fascinating, but I think we might need a little bit of some
Yeah,
fun here.
we need a palate cleanser. And Ashlyn, we really appreciate you
Of
joining
course.
us for this. This is a fascinating topic, and we want to. Usually, we do a little game or something with our guests at the end of the interview. Are you okay with
Mm.
that?
Oh my God, yeah, that sounds like
Okay.
fun.
All
All
right. We're
right.
gonna try. Are
I
you
love a
ready for
game.
this, Ruth? We're
I
gonna try
am
something
ready.
new. Okay.
I'm
We haven't
ready.
done this before, but this is do you remember playing Mad Libs when you were a kid? Did you do Mad Libs at all?
Yes. Are you going to ask me noun, verb, adjective? Because
You
I don't
bet.
remember
Possibly.
what's adjective. Is adjectives ly anything?
That's ly is, I think, an adverb.
See, I'm
Uh,
already screwed.
Always.
I'm already
yeah.
Yeah.
done.
Don't
Uh,
worry. We'll help you if
Adjective
you get stuck.
Okay.
describes
Okay.
something. So
Actually, I
like,
don't think we have any adverbs. So
Like
you're
pretty
you're
or like beautiful or
yeah, beautiful
like
would be an
tall.
adjective.
Tall.
right,
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
adjective.
okay. Okay.
Okay.
It's coming back to me now.
Are
I have
you
a
ready?
master's degree, everybody, but I don't remember an adjective. Here we go.
All right.
And we're gonna have a little bit of fun based on this topic. Okay,
Okay.
so this is just a good time.
Okay.
So first, we need an occupation.
Ooh. Any occupation?
Any occupation.
Zookeeper.
Okay. This is gonna be good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
already. Person's name.
Beth.
And type of event.
Hmm. Birth of a new hippopotamus.
You went there.
I
Okay.
don't know,
Yeah.
guys. This is the first thing that comes to my head, unfortunately. You're getting an insight into my insane
You're
mind.
That's okay.
All right. Plural noun. Now that's just a noun with an S on it. So
Hmm.
noun is a person, place, or thing.
Ooh, let's do a place. Let me think about this. What's in line with the zoo theme?
Uh, a zoo.
Zoo.
It's a
Aquarium, a
place.
zoo.
Aquarium,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Aquarium.
Aquarium, sure. It's a weird place for a hippo to give birth, but cool.
Yeah, yeah. How about I need two verbs in a row.
Jump and swims.
Okay. And a proper noun.
Hmm.
This is
I
going to be
needed
good.
I need another aquarium. It's like I went
A
blank.
proper
I need
noun. Is that like a
Yeah.
name?
So
What
that
is a
would be
proper
like
noun?
if you were going with an aquarium, it would be like Monterey Bay Aquarium. That would be a proper noun.
Oh,
Oh,
like
Right.
what about like Sydney
Yeah.
Aquarium?
Sydney Aquarium.
Sydney
Perfect.
Aquarium.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I need another proper noun.
Uh, let's do, oh, can we do like Portland something?
Oh,
Portland
please. Let's do,
Aquarium? Yeah. Let's
yeah.
do like a weird around the world aquarium
Lots of
picklebergs
aquariums in
experience.
this Mad Libs.
It's what happens. And adjective.
That would be a example.
That would be like beautiful, tall,
Let's do
Green,
handsome.
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 Okay. And then noun.
Ashlen? Or would that be proper noun?
That would be
I
a
think that's
proper
a
noun.
proper noun.
Yeah.
Let's do girl.
Okay. Ruth, I'm dying to
And
know what this is.
I know, I'm like
how about a plural noun?
Ashlen.
No, plural noun is a noun with an S.
Hmm.
And I need two of them.
Oh God. Chris, you have to help me with one of
We're putting
these.
her on the
Yeah,
spot
there you
here.
go. Come on, Chris. You
You have to
help
help
her
me
out.
with one of these.
Guitars.
There you go.
Trombones.
There you go. Trombones and
That's
guitars.
an interesting combination.
And then two nouns in a row.
Two more nouns in a row?
I know, yep.
There's 100 more questions. We'll
How
get
many?
through
Yeah,
them.
There's
are we almost done?
712 more questions. So
Are we almost
settle
done?
in, everybody.
Place. Grocery store
Good.
and scooter.
I like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And then two plural nouns and we're done.
Oh my gosh.
Chris and Ruth.
Those are proper nouns.
Proper nouns.
See, I'm my brain is like
You're busy getting people out of,
It's true.
helping
I'm
people
dealing
get
with really abstract, complex problem solving. I don't think
right.
much
Yeah,
about
we're
proper
giving you this
nouns.
is way too
Nouns
easy.
and plural nouns, they're just not something you're worried about.
Okay, plural nouns, that's the S thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the S thing.
Weeds and flowers.
There you
Great.
go.
Perfect.
Is this it?
That's it. That's
Okay,
it.
can you please
Okay.
read us what she wrote?
Okay, this is
I'm really
titled
excited.
Inside the World of Cults. Hosted
Oh,
by renowned zookeeper Beth, this gripping birth of a new hippopotamus takes audiences deep inside the world of aquariums, how they form, why people jump, and what it takes to swim. From
oh.
infamous groups like Sydney Aquarium and Portland
Mm.
Aquarium to lesser known but equally handsome organizations, Beth unpacks the girl manipulation tactics and hidden dangers these groups use to control their guitars. Um, but trombones aren't always as extreme as the headline suggests.
That's
This
true.
show also explores how grocery stores and scooters can happen in everyday life within weeds, workplaces, and even social movements. With real life stories and interactive discussions, audiences will learn to recognize flowers, protect themselves, and understand why people fall under the spell of high control groups. This was a Mad Lib brought to you by the description of your show.
Yay!
If you are interested in the
was
actual description,
so
you got to go to our
confusing.
website.
Yeah, that that went so many places. It was hard for my brain to follow. We were in Sydney. There was a hippo. There was a scooter. There was a grocery store.
Well,
There was a lot going on.
thank you for being our tester on this
Yeah, thank
particular
you.
Of
game.
course, of course, of course.
Now I don't know
yes.
which show I want to see, that one or the original description.
I would personally go to the aquarium show in Sydney. That sounds way cooler. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of the arts, I'm going to a concert tonight, which I'm really
Oh,
excited
excellent.
about.
What are you
Who
seeing?
are you seeing?
Gonna go see Perfume Genius at
Perfume
Revolution
Genius.
Hall. Yeah. It's one of
Awesome.
my favorite artists. I'm really excited.
Nice.
Well, I hope you have a great
Indie
time.
artist. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ashlen,
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for taking time.
Yeah, I'm
Really
excited
great.
to see you guys. I'm
Yeah.
sure I will see you in November.
We'll
As
see you in
many of us
Livermore.
are excited to see you and hear what you have to say.
Oh, great.
And thank you
It'll be
for
a
the
good time.
primer to get us
Of
all ready
course.
for it.
Yes, of
Yep.
course. Of course.
Thank
There will be
you.
some humor mixed in, so it won't be so dark and
All right.
heavy. I just want
Good,
people to know.
good.
Yeah.
I think
gonna
that'll
be
be
fun.
helpful too for people to
Yes.
It'll be a
Yes.
good evening. All right.
All
Well,
right.
thank you so much, Ashlen.
Thanks,
You're off the hook.
guys.
Take care.
Thank
Have a great day.
you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Beyond the Stage featuring Ashlen Hilliard. She will be leading us in a discussion with the psychology of cults at the Bankhead on Sunday, November 23rd at 3 p.m. We suggest you get your tickets now at livermorearts.org or by calling the box office at 925-373-6800. We post new podcasts on the second Thursday of the month, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode or your favorite part. Leave us a comment, ask us a question, or give us a review on our social media, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we may even read it live on our next podcast. You'll find us on all the socials at Livermore Valley Arts. And remember to subscribe or follow us wherever you are and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Ruth Eggerman.
And I'm Chris Carter.
Thanks for joining us.